Welcome to Real Talk episode 29. I am Brian Rose and we're here at London Real Studios. And for the next 30 minutes, we're answering your questions live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, so hit us up. And joining me today is my student, friend, Ms. Clare Lim. She is a movement practitioner from Hong Kong. She's currently on a mini world tour, Paris, London, New York. She's setting up her entire movement practice, and I've been quite honored actually to be able to give you some knowledge over the past 8 weeks on our Business Accelerator course. Clare, welcome to London Real Studios.
Thank you for having me.
How you feeling?
A bit nervous, but good.
You're doing great. You know, we've been talking about movement and how you started moving, and you have such a, I remember when I was looking at your application for the course, you have like a crazy history when it comes to movement, practicing all over the world, and now you're taking your business forward with your movement practice. Can you tell us a little bit about you and how you started moving?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to say I definitely started as a dancer. It took me a while, a couple of years, because I grew up since I was 3 taking ballet classes. It wasn't even a choice. You know, my mom just put me in a pink tutu and said, go. And then from then it turned into a real passion, you know, a real outlet for me to express myself physically. Along with that, I also competed in track and field and swimming. So I was always very athletic and very into different kinds of movement.
This is all in Hong Kong?
Yeah, and this was in Hong Kong.
Okay.
I traveled around. I was fortunate and privileged enough to travel around to go to different dance festivals, different sports festivals as a kid, to compete, to perform, and just to learn. And I think from a young age, I had this idea to always be expansive and always look to travel, to go and meet other people, to always broaden my own perspective. I ended up going to dance school in Boston at the Boston Conservatory for about a year. And there, sort of everything kind of went downhill for a little bit because I didn't want a dance education in that sort of setting. I really just wanted to experience the movement and express myself fully. And that's when I left and started my own movement path, really, going from discipline to discipline, traveling around, learning lots of different styles of yoga, Pilates, strength training, and I ended up becoming a CrossFit coach for a while, competing, training, you know, so from this little dancer girl, I wanted to be strong, I wanted to, you know, like lift the world off my shoulders, you know, have that sort of feeling. And that's also when I found Ido Portal and was connected with all sorts of different movement people, movement enthusiasts, practitioners from all walks of life, you know, from being professional dancers, fighters, and whatnot, to just people who are interested in moving their bodies.
Right. And so when you were in Boston learning how to be a dancer, they probably trained dancers to be professional dancers only, and you weren't feeling that that's where you wanted to be. You wanted to just learn more about movement. Is that it?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a part of me that wanted to be a good performer, that wanted to enter a great contemporary ballet company, but at the same time I felt like it was really limiting. And you know, it was obvious in my injuries. You know, I had multiple ankle sprains, back issues from my spine being way too straight, and it's not good posture. You know,
and
it's
this is at 18, 20 years old?
Yeah, okay. This was 17, 18, and so I wanted more, and I was, you know, heartbroken in a way, leaving the dance world, because many dancers, I think, you know, dance is beautiful. All sorts of dance are beautiful, because it's an art form, not just physical, but it's also, you know, a piece of art whenever somebody's performing. So it was heartbreaking to leave, but at the same time, I knew that my calling was elsewhere, and I would be able to use all my training, all my experiences in different places, and, you know, be where I am now with movement.
Okay. You mentioned Ido Portal. We've had quite a history with Ido here in the studio. I've got a lot of love for Ido. We had him first here in 2014, then we had him back in 2015, and he was sitting in that same chair, and we interviewed him, and some people say it was one of our greatest interviews, but I was frustrated at the end. I thought I did a lousy job, and I'm a bit like you, Clare. I'm very obsessed with getting things right, and that's why I like you so much. And afterwards, I spent 2 days at Ido's movement experience in London, and just blew my mind, you know, as he does to people, right? Really opens your brain up. And I remember I came up to him afterwards on Sunday, and I'm like, "Are you leaving town?" Because I wanted to reshoot the interview.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I'm gone, I'm going to Berlin." He's always moving, right?
Yeah.
And so we ended up having him back a couple months later, and we did this moving conversation and walked around London. And that's when I finally feel like we captured what Ido was talking about, because I got him moving while he was talking, right?
Yeah.
It takes a big brain to figure that one out. But he definitely changed the way I looked at movement. And I know now, you know, he's training with Conor McGregor now for the next UFC, doing big things. Talk to me about this whole movement idea. I think people, thanks to Ido, are starting to understand this movement concept. But on the Business Accelerator, you were talking to Tika, who's an ex-Wall Streeter, a lawyer here in London, Carla, NHS doctor, saw 70,000 patients, and they're like, "What's movement?" Do you get that a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I still don't have a definite answer. And this comes from Ido himself, you know, saying that the moment we start to crystallize something, give it a definition, it starts to die in some way. And for me, then it depends on who I'm talking to. You know, if I can draw from their experiences, if I'm talking to somebody who's a professional or very good at what they do in one discipline, like a dancer or a fighter or a weightlifter, then the idea of increasing diversity of movement, you know, for example, if you only build strength and you only build more and more tension in a very linear way, then that's going to bring problems, because when accidents happen in life, when you roll out of bed, you don't roll in a linear way. So when life happens at you, it always happens in a way that you can't perceive, you couldn't see it coming, and it's sort of this idea of physical anti-fragility in a way. And then on another hand, there's also the brain benefits, you know, learning and experiencing how to move in more complex movement patterns helps to make new connections in your brain, you know. And just imagine that if your brain moves faster and can take more complex information, what would that do in your life? You know, with your relationships, with your work.
Yeah, and Ido likes to talk about Nassim Taleb, the whole anti-fragile concept. I'm going back in the gym and trying to do push-ups on my wrists, and the trainers are like, "Why would you do this? Why do you need to do this?" And when you start talking to them, but what happens when your arm gets stuck in the door? What happens when you roll out of bed one day and something falls funny? Your body isn't ready for all of these random movements. And then also the whole idea that pain doesn't always mean bad. It can mean that your body's just conditioning itself. And I've learned a little bit about that, you know, from Ido. Not to mention the mental benefits, which are hard to explain to someone.
Yeah.
But you're a former dancer, and Ido is always about this whole, I think he calls level 1 learning, where you're learning so many new things, but most of what the world knows as fitness is repeating a lot of these same things. And so how do you explain that to people, those differences?
Difference between fitness and movement?
Yeah, or between something you're moving for the first time and like the learning process you have in your brain, versus many times when people think of the gym, they're going to run on a treadmill, which I've done 1,000 times before, lift the bench press in the same motion they've done many times before. Can you have that conversation with people easily, or is it hard for them to grasp?
I think it's difficult. It's difficult because of how I think we're taught to relate to our bodies, or even, you know, it has to do with how we're taught in school right now, which is starting to change, you know, and especially countries like Denmark, because I have a friend there who talks about how, you know, they're encouraged to think more creatively, think outside of the box. And where I'm going with this is that I think as we've evolved and become civilized human beings, we've been taught that there are correct ways to move, that there are systems to follow, and that's all well and good. You know, for example, if you're bench pressing body weight and up, you know, something heavy for you, you want to do it correctly and be in alignment. But life is not about being in alignment, and we can't always, you know, we're not always moving in alignment. We're not sitting or, you know, talking in alignment right now. So it's when I start to introduce the idea of just being more organic, you know, exploring the body, see where, for example, the elbow likes to go, rather than the correct way to move it. And there not being a reason, you know, there not being a big why or a big benefit to it, but rather just coming out of curiosity, then I think that starts to sell people a little bit, because it's something different. You know, like you said, you can go to a Zumba class or a spinning class even, and it's the same thing over and over again. But there's so much more to explore.
I think people see sometimes movement as a fitness issue. You get some great endorphins and you go home. And I did that for a long time. I would go lift, it made me feel good, made me feel all right, but I was missing this component. And after meeting Ido, I started just moving for fun, goofing around, swinging on the bars. It's all documented on my YouTube videos. And then I was lizard walking, and then one day I started breakdancing. And for me, it was just a really amazing organic way for me to start expressing myself physically. I learned some of those lessons from Elliot Hulse as well, who was in here. And now I love doing it, and I'm dancing now. If you would have talked to Brian 2 years ago, he would have never danced. He was doing the tough guy stuff, the martial arts, where you hit the bag and you're really serious and you tap people out on the mat. But I was missing this whole component of my brain and my body of this movement thing. So I'm fascinated by what you're doing. And also, I'm curious where you want to go with what you're doing. You mentioned to me this whole idea of the X-Men. Can you tell me what you're building in Hong Kong, what you're building as a practice? Part of your tribe is here in the studio right now. What's going on with Clare?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason why I joined the Business Accelerator in the first place was because I wanted to build a movement platform, the first in Asia, to teach people, sort of the things that similar to what we do with Ido Portal, but also have a platform to support other young practitioners like myself to become better teachers, continue to research and compete, perform, do what they want to do with movement, and also start to spread the message a little bit in person. And we decided to call ourselves Collective X, and this comes from the X-Men, because for me, I think how I became open-minded and began to explore movement and found all my teachers and mentors all over the world is through my own struggles, emotionally, mentally, feeling a little bit like a mutant. And I think we all are. I really believe we all are, because we all are unique. And that's where I really, really connected with the X-Men, because they all have different superpowers and have struggled in their lives before they became great, or they still struggle, yet they can work together to help other people. And I drew most of my inspiration from being like Professor X, finding the others. And that's how my journey began with my boyfriend Val, and that's how we found our Lucas. And because we all have different skills. I am an ex-dancer. I did a lot of yoga and Pilates, and Val is a parkour practitioner who's on Ninja Warrior, and it's airing right now in France. And Lucas is a calisthenics. He can do one-arm muscle-ups for days. That's his thing. But together, we're not looking to teach people to, do, just the one-arm muscle up or get their head to their toes, but rather than that, it's for every single person to reach their own unique creative expression through the physical layer, which I think many other fields are starting to do, with different kinds of coaching, free writing, meditation. That's all great, and now I'd like to add the physical layer into it. So we're starting first with a platform in Hong Kong. We're opening a movement facility, hoping to teach people and inspire people, and also continue to be inspired by others, by setting a platform that invites other movement practitioners, experts, specialists of all sorts to come and teach, give them a platform to share, to have a voice in Asia, in Hong Kong.
It's an amazing vision you have, and I love listening to it. And so many people I know do physical practices, and they'd love to have their own gym, their own idea, their own movement. But so many times they just don't understand the business side of it. They don't know what to do next. They make bad decisions. I know so many people that opened up a jiu-jitsu thing and it made them go bankrupt. And so how are you approaching your business now, even before or after the Business Accelerator? But what are you doing that's going to make your business last a long time, which is going to make your message last a long time?
Yeah, what I learned from the Business Accelerator, especially in the module about developing a product ecosystem, and also from our course advisor, Chris Albert, because he actually ran a gym on his own. And he also runs his own online training business, online coaching business, while he's selling his t-shirts to veterans. So I learned so much from him. And through the course, I realized that it's important to be diverse, So rather than just helping people in our platform in Hong Kong, we're also going to launch an online platform to coach people and to provide a lot of personal support. We're going to start first with a very special course preparing people to, or enthusiasts even, to go for Ninja Warrior, just because we have Val on our team and that's his specialty.
Right, that's your IP.
Yeah,
exactly. He knows it well.
Yeah,
People are huge fans of the show, so they can train like a Ninja Warrior to either get on the show or at least be like them. I love that idea.
Thank you.
So when I heard you say that like 2 calls ago, I was like, wow, you've obviously been thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then now you're also going to have the practice in Hong Kong. So you're going to learn there on the ground, learn what it's like to teach, get feedback, that kind of pieces.
Yeah.
What other long-term things are you thinking about your business? Things you need to do, things you don't want to do? I think you said you're trying to get the team all to Hong Kong at some point.
Yeah, everybody's going to be in Hong Kong by mid-late August. There's so many things I've been thinking about, but one of the newer ideas that's, a couple years down the line is it's similar to how there are yoga festivals in the big cities. I don't know if there's one in London, but basically, there could be a weekend in a huge indoor space where there are different kinds of yoga teachers from all over the world following different styles, and they can all teach together. They have their own little seminar rooms and they can teach, and I really like to see that happen for movement. I've been very much inspired by Ido Portal, and there's so many other great teachers out there that I think have such a unique message, even if it seems like what we have to present at this point is quite similar. I think that each person is a KPI, and we attract different people. We have a different niche, we attract different people, and we deliver our message for movement. It might be just to become strong, it might be for fun, it might be for that, brain complexity. So, I'd really like to get people together and hold festivals all over the world. That's one of the things I'm really looking to do, because that's not just for me. I'm not all about just promoting me and Collective X. I'd also really like to see, to encourage, and empower other movement practitioners. I'd really like to spread the message that other people can be doing this, especially other young people, stepping up to be entrepreneurs.
Right. Let me ask you about being an entrepreneur. You're obviously very intense, Claire. And what did I call you on that first call? I was like, Claire's got the crazy eyes, right? Because when I saw you on that call, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, this young lady is here to do something very serious. It obviously got you very far in your physical practice, but now you're an entrepreneur and you've been through the 8 weeks with us. What do you think it takes to make a good entrepreneur? Because you saw some people do really well in the Accelerator. You saw some people drop off because, I don't know, they missed something, couldn't embrace it. What do you think it takes to be an entrepreneur?
A big heart, first of all. Lots of passion, a dream, for sure. I don't think that a person needs to be that clear about the exact product or the exact service, because like we just said, I kind of pivoted or multi-pivoted from having just a physical platform to going online as well. I think that entrepreneurs are usually quite intense and can go kind of just off the reservation a little bit, with ideas, with brainstorming. And I think that embracing going a little crazy, that's important for me. I had conversations with different people in the course who've become really good friends of mine. At certain points when I just had so many ideas and I couldn't sleep, and I became slightly nocturnal as well at the first half of the course because the calls were at 2 a.m. for me. So I'd be messaging Tim, telling him, I've got so many ideas, I don't know what to do.
You couldn't sleep after the call. You do the call from 2 to 3 a.m. Hong Kong time, and then you'd be up.
Yeah, because I had so many ideas, and it's so easy to just label me and say, you're bipolar, which I've gotten before, but I also then did a lot of research on the DSM on my own as to how these, mental disorder sort of labels are just voted on by whoever's in the council, so that's a separate talk. But for me, I think that being willing to change, being open, being forward thinking, being expansive, yet at the same time being patient, with what comes or what doesn't come yet in terms of sales or like connections, collaborations with other people. So there's all of it, so it's sort of a be everything, but also be who you are at the same time. I think it's not for everybody. I have to say that, when I thought about what I would say in a testimonial for the Business Accelerator, the first thing that came to mind was that I need to be genuine and honest, and I can't say that this is for everybody. It's not, like we saw, it's not for everybody. The 30 people who were entered into the course, they're all brilliant. They're all brilliant, have great ideas, great personalities, and great potential. But it's not for everybody. But that's also the beauty of it, because in some way, it was a bit like the Hunger Games. Watching how people survive and thrive, and it brought out the best in some of us. And for the others, I hope that it will just serve as inspiration, because the community will always be there to support each other. So there's no falling behind and that being it.
Yeah, so it's called a Business Accelerator, but I call it a life accelerator, because it just challenges you to get out of your own way, to overcome pressure and struggle, to call yourself on your own BS that you're telling yourself. Oh yeah, one day I'm going to do this business. Well, okay, now it's time to do it. Yeah. And then you realize that your ideas were bad, that you have a competitor that's already doing that, and then you have to see if you're willing to pivot and push it. And at one point, I was talking to Tika, who's our ex-Wall Streeter in New York, and he got so mad at one of the technology issues because I was forcing everybody to make web pages with landing pages that converted email addresses so we can have sales conversations. And he's getting mad, and he's swearing on the call. Yep. Which I had to call him on a couple times. And I got mad, and he said, Brian, later I looked at myself, I'm like, why are you getting mad at Brian? He's like, that doesn't make sense. And he pushed through it, and now he's the master of landing pages. And so, but some people would have faltered there. So it is really it kind of tests you along the way. Yeah. And, for the next few years, it's going to be more of tests. So we always say, once people leave our accelerator, that's when it starts to get hard. So we try to battle harden you before you get out there. Yeah. And Chris, our former Marine, who's one of our instructors and a former graduate of the Accelerator as well, he's amazing. That's who you're talking about earlier with Warrior Soul Apparel. And this whole idea of product ecosystem, I always try to tell people, if you get one thing out of the course, get that. And that's the fact, when people ask me, it's like, you're not going to sell 1 million t-shirts for $9 each. You're not going to sell 1 million apps for $3 each. What you're going to do is you're going to have lots of product ecosystem. You're going to have free products, great things that you contribute to the community with asking nothing in return. You're going to have low-cost products. It could be a class someone stops by for. It could be a short video series. And you're going to have a core product. It could be a retreat. Could be a personal instruction. And then later, you might have a business product where Claire comes in and shows how your organization needs to move, to make you more a productive startup company. So it's just great to get people thinking about all of that stuff at once. Absolutely. What was your biggest struggle? When were you thinking, okay, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I don't like Brian anymore. I know you were working on Sleep Depth and all that stuff, but what was the module that was the hardest? Was it filming yourself? I know you said we demand 10 vlogs in 10 days where you have to film yourself. How did that go at first? And I think you found out that people liked different content that you expected.
Yeah, so I was so angry when we had to do the vlogs. Not at you, just angry at the situation of like, oh my gosh, we have to do this. And I had so many comments about it, that the vlogs were video selfies, and I don't even take photo selfies, so it was the point. And then I started just with my free writing, ideas I had, and nothing really came, and that's when we really had to be patient. And I think you said 10 in 10 days for a reason, for us to trial and error, see what would work, what wouldn't work. And I ended up making one vlog that was successful, and it was sort of a split screen with me talking and moving at the same time. And that I did with as little minimal editing as possible, because you said not to edit. So I cheated a little bit there, but I tried to move and hold the camera and talk at the same time, and it was just a bit too much. I could develop that later. And then, so I felt kind of discouraged there, because many other people in the course have such enthusiasm and such a strong presence on camera. Sarah, for example, the other movement practitioner in the course.
Yeah, out of Vancouver, yeah.
Yeah. And most everybody can create great video content, and that's the thing that I realized, is that everybody can do this.
Isn't that fascinating? I mean, we had an incredible group of 30 people, but I would say everybody had camera presence. So what does that mean? Does that mean that everyone really does? They just don't believe they do?
I think so. I believe so. because when we had to do the Facebook Live, and I saw Sonam, did the first one, and that sort of motivated me to, get it over with. So I strategized and had it right before our group call, because I knew that's when everybody would be on their computers. So I knew, okay, I will at least have 30 people who support me and care about me watching. So I did that, and it really worked. I had about 1.7K, so 1,700 views. And I don't even have 1,000 Facebook friends. So I don't know how it happened.
Wow.
I don't know who's been sharing it.
Yeah.
But it really worked, and I started answering questions from other people. I went prepared, and it worked. I think the Facebook Live worked for me rather than the vlogs, but the vlogs are also okay now, because I felt like I was talking to people, and connecting and helping and providing value to them.
Yeah, and all of those things become part of your message. And I'm sure even though some of the things you're saying to me today, you've either consciously or subconsciously honed over those vlogs, over the Facebook Live, over talking. So I love it because you creating content, and then it becomes a message, and then you resonate with it, and that's going to be a product someday that's going to help someone do something. And then you can kind of move on to your next message, whatever you're feeling like at the time. So talk to me about the group dynamic, being on the same calls with everyone, seeing their faces on the Facebook group, getting inspired by people when you feel a little low on something. What was that like?
Was great. The calls are amazing. I'm really going to miss that. We've actually spoken, a couple of us in the cohort already. We're going to keep in contact and hold our weekly calls, to make it a little similar. The only thing that's missing will be your face, I guess.
Break for me, maybe. Well, yeah, we use the Zoom's live video calling software, so you can see everyone's face, and everyone can talk. And in case I want to ask someone a question, I can ask them.
Right.
So it's quite personal, right?
Right. Yeah. It really was. I mean, it feels different for sure than being in person with you now. But those were great, just because sort of listening to other people's ideas and where they're at, their progress with the course, with their own lives. That's great. That brings perspective. And also I made so many friends with people on the course, and it's been a real honor, because there are people in the course from, different demographic, different age group, live in different places, have different experiences, yet everybody was so open and so supportive. There was no part of me that felt like I wasn't welcome, or I wasn't an equal to them, including, people like Tika and Stevie, who have so much experience in their field. Tika, with his whole video course coming out in less than a week, and Stevie with his ebook as well, and holding a webinar before the course ended. I have so much respect for people like that. And then there's also the women in the course, who I love, because there are fewer women entrepreneurs. So I have so much respect for Lisa May, Expat Real, and Carla. Carla is so sweet.
Yeah.
So there's different kinds of support as well. There's different people to go to, because some people in the course are more cerebral, forward thinking, know how to expand. Some people are the people you talk to about your feelings, but all together it just becomes like a real family. And I'm actually headed to dinner with them later, right? So
yeah, you've made a dinner. There's like 8 or 9 people at dinner I'm coming by to.
Yeah.
So yeah, you guys were already meeting for dinner. So that's crazy. And we had some great women on the course. Like the women of London Real are like the strongest, coolest, most solid. So I'm always proud of them. But I think you are kind of outshone the men to a certain extent on this course, because you had Vera from Panama, Carla, ex-NHS doctor, Sarah moving in Vancouver, you. There's more. There's lots more, and it was just like very good, solid, strong presence.
Yeah.
And again, like we open up, and everyone's just like vulnerable from the start, and we kind of have these rules where that's okay, and everyone's respectful. But like I said the rules once, and then I don't even know if I needed to say them, because everybody from the beginning was super helpful. And I didn't think about this age thing. You're 22, and like you got Tika as an ex-Wall Street guy who's in his 50s, maybe. Sorry, Tika, if you're listening. And like Steve, barrister, very long storied law career, and yet you were an equal. I didn't even think about that, because it just seemed normal to me. So
yeah. I don't think I ever forgot about that, but everybody definitely made me feel, at home. So that was great. But this is also important for me, carrying on with Collective X, carrying on as an entrepreneur, or just a person. To be a good person, and also to support other people, especially the younger ones. to let other people in my age range, people in their 20s, struggling and figuring out whether or not to go to college or to take this job or that job, to just step up, to who they really are, their bigger selves, and to not be afraid of taking risks. That's big for me.
Is that something you learned over the last 8 weeks, or did you know that before?
I think I kind of knew it before, but when I came onto the course and started getting to know everybody else a lot more, and then realizing I was, kind of like the baby of the course, that was important for me, to begin to support other young people. I always had that in mind. That's how, for Collective X, all of us, we're all under 25 at the moment.
Right.
At the moment. But that's important for me because it's just harder for young people to start with, getting their bearings in this world, figuring out what we want to do, where to go, who to learn from, being short of money. And I'd really like to support people that way.
You guys have this real open energy. I know even while you're in London, you're going to all these different movement practices. You're going to CrossFit gyms. You were at a great gymnastics facility today.
Yeah, at Beckton.
Beckton, you did your first backflip.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'll share the video later.
I hear it's quite a little adrenaline rush when you're going back.
Yeah. Well, it felt silent for a moment because it was so quick. Actually, Val and our other friend Kevin Francom from Parkour Generations at the chain store in East India, they both supported me, and they took me from the foam pit to the soft mat, and they were speaking in French, and Val was actually telling Kevin that she's just going to do it, like she's just going to do the flip. And I heard it, and he thought I didn't understand. I was just, I'm not doing the flip yet, I'm just doing the fallback, But then eventually, they prepped me to do it with two assists and then one assist. Yeah, but it's interesting and it's very liberating, because I knew today would be a good day. I was going to see Brian Rose, come to London Reels, so that was a day from a backflip.
And you did it, no assist?
No, not yet, but I will. Yeah.
Well, you did it.
Yeah.
I want to do mine next. So, all right, for you, next 6 months. For your business, what's the biggest thing, and what's going to be your biggest challenge, do you think?
I think the biggest challenge will be with the facility in Hong Kong, because it's hard to keep a gym up and running, so I'll know within the first 3 to 6 months. That's going to be a concern. We're ready. We're ready to teach. We're ready to teach full day. We're ready to talk to different people. We know that our message might not vibe with everyone. We hope that it does. We hope to inspire people. But at the same time, we've made some great connections, and we have a lot of support, because I grew up in Hong Kong and I've been involved with the yoga field, the CrossFit field, even some of the martial arts clubs, including Mindful Wing Chun in Hong Kong. I've seen some of my different teachers and inspirations. I've seen them rise as well as entrepreneurs, so I do have some role models and some supporters there, and I've given them support in the past, so I think it helps to have friends.
Yeah, it does, and it also helps to have a product ecosystem.
Oh yeah.
And you're going to be doing digital products and all these other things, and networking
absolutely.
With all sorts of other peer groups, and doing collaborations and all these things that we talk about in the course, because that way you have a whole base of a business. So if for some reason this one facility doesn't do the things, the numbers you want here, your ideas, which I think is your IP, Claire, your ideas, your open-mindedness, your knowledge across all sorts of sectors, yoga, the way you're looking at this as a mental component as well.
Yeah.
That's your IP. People want your energy. They don't necessarily need your facility on the street in Hong Kong.
Right.
So as long as you keep doing that and productize that IP, you guys are going to do great, in my opinion. Advice to someone who doesn't know what to do when it comes to taking their obsession, love for movement, taking their small business as a personal trainer or a movement person, and wants to turn it into something like you. What do you tell them?
Have a team, find your supporters. Could be your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your parents, but have people around you to support you, and because there will be so many people who will think you're crazy at first, but also then just do it. There will be frustrating days and really good days. I think it's just more ups and downs, but that's part of the journey. Yeah.
And for people that are listening to us, maybe like Tika, although Tika lost 16 pounds on the course, he told me at the end, because he said, yeah, Claire was talking about this movement thing, so he started moving. But for people like Tika before the course, who don't know anything about movement, what's the one thing you can say to just get them to start learning something about it? What's like that gateway drug for most people just to start doing something?
Well, that's easy. I think whatever you do next, if you're getting off a chair, if you're opening a door, if you're going to drink a glass of water, you're just finding ways to relate to it. Start to play, start to play with the idea of playing, because I think as adults, that's something we don't do anymore. We sit properly, we talk properly, there's no more, I'm not coming over to touch you right now. Like we've adopted certain mannerisms. So I think just being more playful, the next morning when you wake up, get out of bed differently. How differently can you move? And, this, I think, just gets people to start thinking differently, and relating to their bodies in a different way. Just because for me, there's so much to do, right? And I don't know who I'm talking to and who's watching, that this would be one idea that I could give. And also because I can't guarantee any results.
Yeah. I learned to play in that Edo experience those 2 days. And yeah, as adults in Britain as well, in London, everything's, we're dressed up and it's very proper, and there's a history here of how you behave, and it had to do with the Industrial Revolution and new money, and you had to behave, and so we sometimes forget that you need to play and goof around and roll on the floor like kids do, because it's fun. You remember, it's fun.
Yeah.
So I agree, this body is this whole mechanism of play and experience that we kind of forget about sometimes. So,
yeah.
And there's so much now video online where you can just learn about something or learn about a movement, or can we watch you move online as well if people want to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. How do people find you?
So right now you can look for me, Valentin, and Lucas.
Okay.
And my Instagram is just Clare Lim. I spell Claire without the I, so it's CLARELIM. And we also have our website up and running. It's a bit rough around the edges still, but it's collectivexmovement.com if you're interested.
Good. How's the landing page looking?
It's good. I think it's a bit intense, like you said about my personality. I wanted to display so many different parts of myself that we added so many photos of a jump, a flip, a lever, a splits, all that. But it's coming along, and for sure I'll be going over the material, talking to people, always refining everything. That's what I learned from the course, that, it's not just about checking off those tasks on the Excel sheet, which I did.
Yes.
But there's more.
We have this big Excel spreadsheet on the course, and everyone can see everyone else's work.
Oh, yeah.
And Claire was the only one that finished the whole thing, I think, and like 96% finished, or maybe it's 100. And it was a lot of tasks. There's more, 40 columns, I believe. But at the very last piece, I think we talked about your funnel and just going back and looking at your entire ecosystem of lead generation all the way down to sale, and to constantly look at it. And like we constantly look at it here on London Real, we're constantly looking at where people are finding us on YouTube, where people are finding us on Twitter, how we're selling them an academy product or a digital course, or how we're meeting up with them somewhere in London, or how we're changing their life. So we're always looking at this, and it's a constant procedure. You should always be revising your pitch.
Yep.
You should always be thinking about your hero's journey. Could your website be better? Could your social media be better? Could you be reaching out to other influencers and networking with them, having better sales conversations? So all that stuff that we teach, you're right, it's not just ticking off. It's like, it's something that I think every great business person goes back and revisits.
Always.
So, well, I'm super excited to watch your class, because for the next year, I think there's going to be some people doing some amazing things, including you. Thanks for coming by the studio. I know we didn't tell you we were going to go live, but it didn't bother you at all.
Yeah. Well, in some way I did, I'd strategized. I'm always thinking. You taught me to be more forward thinking, and so, I kind of knew, but at the same time, I didn't know, right? So I had to be prepared for everything. But also thank you to you, Brian, for, making me feel welcome, helping me get over my nerves and everything.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
I remember you were one of the last applications to come through in the course, and I read your application. I was like, okay, this looks pretty serious, and you were just excited to be on there. And from the beginning, I knew you were, probably going to do some big things. So I was excited about that. And then you were coming over today. We were just going to shoot a video, and I was just thinking, like, people would love to hear your story. You have a great story. Your excitement is infectious, even though you don't always show your emotions. But people, they love what you're doing, and you can see your team all super passionate about what you're doing. So produce lots of media, so I can see what you're doing. And I can't wait to support you guys and share everything you're doing. And I don't know, we're just going to be talking a lot about you. So
thank you so much.
Thank you. You know, these courses are crazy. So for the last 8 weeks, Claire's had to look at me like twice a week, like on video call. And like I come in and we go like an hour straight. It's pretty heavy on Tuesdays and Sundays. There's lots of emails. There's a lot to do. So I'm sure you're looking for a break. But I've really enjoyed, you know, being part of all of your lives and your businesses. And it really has been an honor teaching you. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Cool. All right. That's it. We're out of here for Real Talk. Clare Lim, look her up, Instagram. We'll post all the links below. But yeah, she's one to watch. So keep watching. If you're in Hong Kong, go look her up. And if you're anywhere in Southeast Asia, go fly there and train with her. And yeah, all the best. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Cool. That's Real Talk. We will see you next week for episode 30. And that's it. Be good.